Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. Today, the show is about your extrasensory perception. Who doesn't have it? What does it mean? How does it work? How can we actually get to know more about ourselves? It's so important to know of ourselves so we don't feel like life is playing tricks on us, because the bottom line is everything is happening in the mind. Where is it? How does it happen? We are honored to have here in the studios of Kardec Radio Dr. Jim Carpenter. He is a renowned parapsychology scientist and also a clinical psychologist. He's a diplomate in clinical psychology and a fellow in the American Academy of Clinical Psychology. He has been a clinical associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry of the University of North Carolina School of Medicine. He has served 2 terms on the board of directors of the American Academy of Clinical Psychology and carries on his private practice. He has a lot to share with us because actually he has had the opportunity to meet and work with Dr. J.B. Rhine, who founded the Parapsychology Laboratory, which is like historical worldwide. And he has a lot to share with us. He has written many chapters, book chapters, more than 100 research articles, and several books, including the most recent one, First Sight, ESP and Parapsychology in Everyday Life. He is bringing to life much that we need to know and still lies ahead to be researched. Jim Carpenter is here with us and very soon is going to be talking to you. And if you want to ask him a question, you can always do it live or send us an email. If you want to call in, our toll-free number is 858-769-4705. Again, 858-769-4705. If you want to send an email asking questions, it's okay. KardecRadio@gmail.com or on our chat room at blogtalkradio.com/KardecRadio. We're here live and you can ask your question in the chat room or make a comment as well. Just type it in and our team is taking care of it. For the time being, we need to share with you, before we open the line to Dr. Carpenter, that our sister radio, web radio, Zero Online from Miami, Florida, is there at www.spiritist.com 24/7. They actually have programs in 3 different languages, in Portuguese, English, and Spanish. And they are also retransmitting Kardec Radio's programs at least 3 times a day, which is fascinating. Plus the other programs that are also very, very inspirational, and we truly recommend to all of you. Did you know that we have 10 top shows that really reached record audience at Kardec Radio? All you need to do is go to our website, KardecRadio.com, and get to know more about which shows there are. And they were fascinating, including the one in which Dr. Adrian Hulberg from Thomas Jefferson University in Pennsylvania, he shared with us the amazing research that he has recently published in a peer-reviewed journal in collaboration with Dr. Júlio Pérez and Alexander Moreira in Brazil. It's about the neuroscientific evaluation of the brains of mediums. Quite interesting, very fascinating. It's a lot to do with our minds. We need to know more about it. For the time being, we would like to share as well that Allan Kardec, in the Spirit's book, published in 1857, he has a whole chapter talking about perceptions, sensations of the soul. And in one of the answers to his question 249 of the Spirit's book, the statement says, all perceptions are attributes of the spirit and are part of its being. When it is clothed with a material body, perceptions only arrive through organic channels. In the state of freedom, however, they are no longer localized. Oh, wow. This is a teaser for all of us, because it's making us scratch our heads and think, how does that really work? And that's why we brought to the show Dr. Jim Carpenter. He's going to tell us this and much, much more, so we understand how our mind goes by, so we can get to healthier states of mind. Right now, to kickstart the show, because we're just around the corner of the holiday season, Christmas time, we're going to release to you a beautiful inspirational message that was received by the renowned Brazilian medium, Chico Xavier. It's entitled Christmas Card, and you can get a hold of the message in the CD and book Enlightening Messages at the bookstore of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore at www.ssbaltimore.org. Listen to this after the break. Jim Carpenter is here with us.
Christmas Card. At the dawn of Christmas, which awakens in you the music of hope, listen to the voice of someone who searches for the nest of your soul, someone who lights up the star of generosity in your eyes and sweetens your feelings as though he had a harp of tenderness hidden in his chest. Yes, it is Jesus, the faithful friend who has returned. Even if you did not want to, today you would remember your sacred graces. As you recall your mother's songs at your cradle, your father's care when he held you in his compassionate arms, the patience of the teachers who guided you in school, and the pure love of old friendships that appear to you to be far away, you contemplate the street where lights and carols honor his glory. However, you fall over the weight of tears which cleanse your heart. It is so because he speaks to your soul, pleading for forgiveness for those who stumble, help for those who suffer, a coat for those who tremble in the vastness of night, consolation for those who groan discouraged, and light for those who lay in darkness. Do not hesitate. Hear his petition and do something. Smile again at those who have offended you. Bless those who have wounded you. Share your bounty with your brothers in need. Give 1 minute of solace to the sick. Offer a piece of bread to those who pray alone above ruins and abandoned bridges. Extend a soft bed sheet to those who await death without the coziness of a home. Give up a small sum of your wallet towards helping worn-out mothers who suffer seeing their small children squirm with hunger or make happen the happiness of a forgotten child. It does not matter if you say that you cultivate goodwill only today when Christmas shines on you. Let's start to live with Jesus, even if it is for a couple of hours every now and then, and we will learn little by little to be with him always, as much as he is with us, coming daily into our intimacy and sustaining us forever.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
A new great book and tool for kids and educators. The children's book, Our Father by the Spirit Mei, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is available for purchase at www.edisayofamerica.com. Buy your copy today.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here in a very specific show. It's about our extrasensory perception. There's so much to know about who we are and what we need to do in our lives. So to understand more about it, we are honored to have here with us at Kardec Radio, Dr. Jim Carpenter. He is both a clinical psychologist and a research parapsychologist. And believe it or not, he has actually met and worked with Dr. J.B. Rhine, who founded the Parapsychology Lab in North Carolina. There's so much to know, and he has written many book chapters, more than hundreds of research articles and popular articles, and this year he released a new book entitled First Sight, ESP and Parapsychology in Everyday Life. So here we are. Dr. Jim Carpenter, thank you so much for being with us at Kardec Radio today.
Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed. I have to say that was a lovely prayer that was just preceded this too.
Oh, thank you for your feedback. It's fascinating, Dr. Carpenter, that you actually had the opportunity to meet and work with Dr. J.B. Rhine. We'd like to ask you, some people have already sent this question, how was it? Can you share a little bit about how it was for you to have that experience?
I met Ryan. Actually, I corresponded with Ryan when I was a boy in high school in a small town in New Mexico, and asked him about the possibility of coming to college to Duke to get to know him and to work with his laboratory, and he encouraged that. And so I went to Duke when the parapsychology laboratory was there to go to college, and did get to know him and did work with as a volunteer with the people in the laboratory at that time, and have stayed involved with that ever since. That was 1959 in the fall, and I knew him and all of the people in that laboratory ever since then, over many years. And I'm involved now with the laboratory that succeeded that. It's now called the Rhine Research Center, and I'm still involved with that here in North Carolina. And it still persists, and I've been very active in that and conduct research there and so forth.
That's great. And I mean, it's really about the pioneering efforts in parapsychology, right? How do you see the progress and the growth of and the new perspectives for the field of parapsychology, especially the research?
Well, one thing that struck me when all the way back at the very beginning, I went rather naively to school at Duke, assuming that I would be a psychology major and that parapsychology would be part of my studies. And what confronted me immediately was that Ryan's laboratory had actually been banished out of the psychology department to another part of the university, and I realized came to understand that there was actually a great deal of suspicion and hostility on the part of academic psychology, not just at Duke, but in general to what Ryan was doing. And so I had to try to understand that tension and live with it. And the more I spent time with Ryan and his colleagues, the more I respected them and saw that they were self-critical people and very honest people and worked very hard and certainly had the same rules of ethics and technique that other psychologists did, but at the same time there was some kind of implicit cultural war that's still going on between people who just must feel that it's all nonsense, and on the other hand, the researchers who are trying hard to get objective answers about some real questions. And so I've been struggling with that ever since. As a psychologist and a professor of psychology at UNC for a number of years, University of North Carolina for a number of years, I taught and did research in mainstream psychology, but also did some teaching all along and some research in parapsychology. And to me, those things seem to make sense together, but I understood that for my profession as a whole, they did not make sense. And one reason I wrote this book was to try to bring together mainstream psychology with all that the parapsychologists have been learning about for the last 100 years. And to me, they actually are quite congruent with one another. And I try to develop a way of understanding the mind there that shows how they are very congruent with one another.
Exactly. And as you're saying this, just so the listener knows, the website, your website is drjeancarpenter.com, and for the book is firstsightbook.com. So you were talking about these. It's very challenging. I myself am a scientist as well, though I'm very junior. But it's very tricky, and really trying to keep things in their place, not to mix. But nowadays, with so much of the internet, people get to know of what you do, no matter if you keep it to yourself, right? So with the advent of internet, things may have changed for you in some way and level, but right?
Well, there is quite a amount of activity and attention that I'm certainly not used to. That's come to these ideas, and it's very exciting. And I guess I'm still getting used to the internet as a something that's kind of a foreign land to me a bit still, but it's very exciting to see what can be done there and how much of the world can. I notice on my website hits coming from all over the world, which is rather astounding to me, but certainly fascinating. And I should say something else in terms of in my understanding of your listeners. Another thing besides academic psychology and parapsychology, I've also been a practicing clinical psychologist all these years, and since I've also been associated with the Rhine Center, I have had a number of referrals over the years of people who are bothered in one way or another with experiences that they think of as psychic, and often they obviously really are. And my mother had psychic experiences. I've certainly had my share of my own. And so all of that's been a real part of my life. And when I counsel people who come in with psychic experiences, I start with a position that assumes that these things are certainly legitimate and real and interesting and shouldn't need to be frightening, although they're often frightening to people. And so I've wanted to find a language that normalizes these experiences and takes the kind of frightening hint of pathology out of them, because usually that isn't actually an important part of what's going on. So I've been concerned with trying to build a bridge between the experiences people have and how much suspicion and pathologizing often goes on about those experiences.
And Dr. Carpenter, it's so true, because so many people come to us saying, oh my gosh, where can I find a psychologist or a therapist? And they come to me as psychologists and say, Vanessa, can I do therapy with you? And I say, I, for many reasons, decide not to go into clinical practice in the United States to stay in the research. But in the spiritist centers where we are, many people claim like, oh, I need someone who understands that part of me because it's a part of me. And we tell them, I know, it's very frustrating. In countries like Brazil, you nowadays can find many clinical psychologists who are actually spiritists or spiritualists, and they understand and make you feel comfortable dealing with those issues. But in the U.S., we're not there yet, and that's one of the things we commend your work, because you're trying to build this bridge that is so much needed, because our mainstream psychiatry is suffering pretty bad from not knowing what to do with it.
Yeah, you said that very well. I agree. And it's interesting. I need to learn more about what is available in Brazil. I do have some friends there and colleagues there in parapsychology who are part of, I think, of those resources that you mentioned, and that's terribly important, and it is lacking here very much.
Exactly. For example, Dr. Carpenter, in Brazil, because of the spread of the spiritist centers, we have more than 15,000 there. There are several psychiatric hospitals that are actually managed by people who are spiritists. So they have traditional medicine care in the hospital, and they also have what we call the spiritist therapy to deal with these other psychic features of the mind, which they are still researching. There are lots of scientists such as Dr. Alexander Moreira and Julio Perez and others that are researching on to understand why these other techniques are effective, but they work. That's why we know this far. But we want to know more about how beautifully you're trying to merge, and why did you entitle this fascinating book The First Sight? Can you share this with because usually people talk about the second sight. Why First Sight?
Yes, I think the different. I'm developing a different point of view here. I think that's, as far as I know, never actually been put forward before. It's at least not in parapsychology and in mainstream academic psychology. That the mind is. We ordinarily think of ESP and psychokinesis as rare things that happen in an exceptional way, often to exceptional people, and we think that's where the term second sight comes from. I think it implies that it's an unusual thing that pops up once in a while, kind of on the edge of normal perception. And I think that actually what's much truer to the fact is that ESP is actually going on at an unconscious level continuously, and that it's ongoing every moment, it's ongoing as we speak, and that it is constantly, implicitly informing every thought that we form and every experience that we have and every decision that we make. And the analogy I draw is that is now what we know about the mind in general. Research has developed to the point that we now understand that there's an unconscious level of functioning in our minds that leads to all of our consciousness and all of our actions. And that we know that, for example, that subliminal perceptions that aren't strong enough to register consciously, but that still are impacting on us, like very, very faint little flickers of light and very brief little exposures of stimulus, that these things actually have an effect on us, that they're what psychologists call primes. They function to prime our experience in certain directions. And I'm saying that ESP seems to function in our life exactly the same way that subliminal perception does. That is, as an unconscious level of experience. It isn't that we know things by ESP. It's that ESP helps inform what we're going to know. and that it's actually going on all the time. And that's why I call it first sight. It's actually the first level of our engagement with reality, and it extends beyond our physical selves. The basic assumption of this model is that at an unconscious level, we're not limited to our physical sensory boundaries, that we extend beyond that, and we're constantly sampling reality much beyond those limits. And but that these samplings we have act as unconscious primes rather than as information. It isn't that we exactly know that into stuff, it's that it influences us in the same way that subliminal material does, and also in the same way that things like long-term values and latent memories, these things don't have to be conscious and often aren't, but they still help shape what becomes conscious and what becomes the decisions that we make. And ESP, I think, fits into that matrix. And when we set up experiments in the right kind of way, what we find is that ESP is actually going on all the time, and that it isn't just happening to exceptional people at exceptional moments. It's actually going on all the time, but you need to devise the right kind of experiment to see that at work.
So what kind of protocol do you do to verify these elements that you're talking about, just so we have an idea?
Okay. Well, let me give you an example quickly of subliminal perception, first of all, just because that's the analogy I'm drawing. And we don't know that subliminal perception is going on all the time, but it actually is. We think of subliminal perception as being kind of a weird way to manipulate purchases or something, but it's actually going on all the time, and it's part of the history of every experience. Before you look around a room and your eye lights on a certain thing and you focus on it, well, a split second before your eye lit on that thing and you focused on it and that became the focus of your attention, there were photons from that object impacted on your retina, and they acted as primes, which was part of an unconscious process that led you to that particular thing to focus on, and it helped you be quicker to understand what it was you were about to see. And we know this from experiments in subliminal perception. If we put someone in front of a computer monitor and flash something very, very quickly at them, say we flash a picture of one person hitting another, and underneath the word fight, say. And this flash happens too quickly to be consciously perceived. But then we ask someone to tell us the meaning of the next word they're going to hear. And the word we say is beat. Now, that can be either B-E-A-T, to hit someone, or it can be the vegetable, B-E-E-T. And if what the person has just seen is the subliminal picture of someone hitting another with the word fight, the probability of interpreting beat as B-E-A-T will increase. And the probability of interpreting it as a vegetable will decrease. On the other hand, if they had been shown a subliminal picture of a plate of vegetables, then the opposite would be the case. The subliminal information acts as a prime that pulls us in certain directions. And I think this is exactly the same way that ESP works. For example, Dean Radin and some others in parapsychology have been carrying out experiments that in which people are sitting in front of a computer monitor and they're asked to keep an eye on this monitor, and there will be periods in which it shows nothing, and then there will be a picture that will appear, and they're asked to look at the picture. And meanwhile, these people are wired up to psychophysiology monitors that register very subtle signs of emotional arousal, like changes in heart rate and changes in skin conductance. And some of the pictures that appear on the screen are of emotional things, say terrible car accidents, terrible wounds from battle, and so forth. And some of the other pictures are very peaceful and beautiful. And what we know is that when people look at the disturbing pictures, their physiological arousal increases, and this can be seen on these things that are being monitored. Now, what Radin and others have also found is that within a period of a second or two before the emotional picture appears, those same indications of arousal start to increase. In other words, the person is using ESP to anticipate what's going to be seen, and they're starting to respond in the same way that they're going to respond more fully as soon as the picture really appears. So the fact that the picture will appear is acting as a prime. It's a prime that's coming from the future. But that's how ESP works. The ESP can be about events that are about to happen. And in fact, I think we use ESP that way all the time. Probably the most common use of ESP is to help us anticipate what's about to happen. Because we're all continually interested in knowing what's about to happen, so we can respond to it appropriately. And Radin is showing that this little message from the future, which we're reaching out to a couple of seconds in advance, is affecting our physiology in the same way that the actual picture will affect it more strongly in 2 seconds. And there are a number of other experiments that can reveal this same kind of thing. It's now, when we're sitting and looking at, say you're sitting and watching TV and something disturbing comes on the television, what you're aware of feeling is that you're upset by what you're seeing. What you're not aware of is that you were actually starting to get upset about that thing a little bit before it even happened, even before it even appeared. Now, that's invisible in our everyday experience, but if we set up experiments correctly, we can see it happening. And I could talk about a number of experimental protocols that we've developed in the last few years that show that ESP is actually first sight. It's going on all the time, and it helps us anticipate things. It's not the property of a few rare people. It's not the property of an unusual degree of enlightenment. It's just it's a basic part of everyone's functioning all the time. That's the model anyway.
That's very interesting. Makes so much sense, and even more when you propose the terminology as first sight. It gives us another perspective, but the implications of this are, huge in so many ways, and especially when you were talking about the mind. So, for example, nowadays many people talk about the fact that we have different intelligences, our emotional intelligence, etc. So would you say that the people who are more fully aware of their mind and their subliminal perception, they are better set in life?
They're better what?
They are better composed and settling their emotions in their minds if they are more fully aware. Should one really strive to get to know more or get a hold of all these perceptions that happen to us in an unconscious way? Should we work at that end to be better in life?
Well, that's a really good question, and I don't have a clear answer to that. I do think that I see two different kinds of people. Some people are extremely isolated and confused and lost, and they really are suffering from emotional, mental dysfunction, and for these people, psychic things can be kind of a closet to crawl into and to get lost in. And in that case, I think it isn't so healthy. What I see much more, though, is people wondering how they can expand their normal potential to bring ESP out of this implicit unconscious level into more conscious awareness and to use it more. And I think that there are a number of things that we know that go along with having more access to this. One way of summing up a lot of what we know, and I talk about this a lot in the first sight theory. I have a theory which proposes a number of things that make it more or less likely for psi information to be expressed in our experience. One thing is that there's a great deal in common between having access to ESP experience and having access to creative experiences. So asking if it's desirable or is it beneficial to be more psychic, I think is kind of like asking if it's desirable to be more creative. It has a good side and potentially not such a good side. It's if you value creativity, if you enjoy creativity, if you want to live a creative life rather than perhaps a more predictable or more grounded, down to earth kind of life, then you're more likely, for one thing, you're more likely to have psychic experiences. More creative people have more psychic experiences. People who have more psychic experiences tend to be more creative. Exactly. Those two things are correlated in the population. So, is it valuable to be creative? Many people would say so and want to seek that, and I think they actually tend to be the same people who are interested in exploring the potential of psychic experiences. And if you value creativity, if you value the edge of things and exploring the mysteries in life, then it's certainly beneficial.
Exactly, as you said quite well. I can see so many beautiful overlaps, though in different words, but between your theory and so much that we've got to know through Kardec's works when he talks about the potential we have inside of us and this extra faculty that we have and we should embrace, though in different terminologies, but it overlaps so beautifully. I think it can be quite therapeutic. But Dr. Carpenter, we're going to give a very short break, and when we come back, we would like to ask you a little bit more about the therapeutic implications of your theory.
Okay.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live, every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
A new great book and tool for kids and educators. The children's book, Our Father by the Spirit May, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is available for purchase at www.edisayofamerica.com. Buy your copy today.
Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
The newest edition of the Medium's book by Allan Kardec is now available. Purchase your copy online or via your ebook reader. Simply go to www.edicofamerica.com today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritism for Everyone, the online study of the Spirit's Book and the Gospel according to Spiritism. Spiritism for Everyone meets every Wednesday evening and Saturday morning using the latest technology in web conferencing. You can join in from any computer in the comfort of your home or office, no matter where you are in the U.S. or the world. Spiritism for Everyone is open, free, and requires no registration. To access the web live meetings, go to www.spiritus.us. Spiritism for Everyone is a program of the United States Spiritist Council.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here with the renowned Dr. Jim Carpenter, and you can get a hold of a lot of what he's doing at his website, drjimcarpenter.com, or the website of his latest book, firstsightbook.com. There's a lot to know. It's so beautiful to the work, the proposal of his work, trying to bridge it up and make us understand that whatever is out there that we feel it's extra, it's actually, as Dr. Larry Dorsey said in his comment to the book, it's actually about the natural part of us. And Allan Kardec, Dr. Carpenter, talked about it as well. He said, like, what we call supernatural is actually just part of nature. It's just that we don't quite understand it yet. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful insight. I think that's exactly right. And what I think the scientists can offer here is help in adding to that understanding, so that we not only can have a sense that it must be part of everyday nature and belong to everyone, but that we can actually learn more about how that works in this theory. And I would say, in terms of websites, if the listener wanted to find out more about this, by far the better of my two websites would be the firstsightbook.com, because on my other website it focuses on my clinical practice and doesn't really have that much to do with this book, except that it is a way to get copies if you want to download them of other papers along this line that I've developed over the years. But I think we're trying to the scientists are trying to say how exactly ESP does work and how it does fit into everyday functioning, and trying to normalize it that way, and that's certainly the aim of my model.
And that's and one of the most beautiful parts of it is the therapeutic element in this proposal, because it brings in an element that, as we've mentioned before in our conversation, unfortunately mainstream psychiatry is still ruling it out and trying to contain it with pharmaceutical with the pharmaceutical resources. So can you tell us more about how this theory could help people who are out there experiencing some type of psychopathology? Let's talk about depression, for example. The number of people with depression have been escalating over the last decades. How can, in this theory, we understand more about the depressed mind and help it out?
That's an interesting question that I hadn't exactly considered. I think that actually the longer I've been around in mental health, one feeling I've come to have is that when we say that things like depression and bipolar disorder and so forth are increasing, I think part of that is driven by what drugs are available at the time. And we've had in recent years just a revolution in the number of pharmaceuticals that are available for treating depression and bipolar disorder, and I think partly as a consequence, those conditions are much more often diagnosed. They're just more popular in psychiatry now, rather than. Human misery is ancient and can take many forms, and I think that when we have different tools to treat it, we tend to think of misery in terms of our tools. But as far as my model goes, I think the main implication of this model is that it normalizes psi experiences and says that not only are they not essentially pathological, but that they're actually universal and continuous. It's just that we don't usually come to be aware of them. Let me give one other example about coming to be aware of something subliminal. This is in my own experience. A few years ago, my level of hearing took a dip. I became a little deafer than I had ever been before in my life, and so I wasn't hearing things as well as the normal person, the average person around me. And I was in a conversation one day with my family, and I said something that I thought was a perfectly interesting idea. And I looked around, and my daughter was rolling her eyes and making a little face in a way that sort of implied, oh, he's doing it again. And then I thought, well, what am I doing again? And what I had done was that what I had just said was actually a restatement of something that somebody else had said a minute before.
Oh, wow.
And everyone else in the group had heard that, but I hadn't, because it was below my level of hearing, since my level of hearing was a little poorer than the others there. And so for me, it was a subliminal stimulus. And what it did was it primed that thought for me, but I thought it was a perfectly original idea. But what that did is it allowed me to see a subliminal prime at work. And ordinarily we don't get to see that. It's going on all the time, but we never see it. It's invisible. And the same thing is true about ESP. It's actually, according to my model, and I think it's probably true, it's going on all the time, but we don't see it. Now, when we do see it, it can seem very, very strange and eerie and perhaps beautiful, perhaps frightening, and it's easy to pathologize this. So I think the biggest mental health implication of my model is that it really takes the abnormality out of these kinds of experiences, and it takes actually the word para out of parapsychology. It's saying that what this is, it's just another part of our psychology, just like subliminal perception is a part of our psychology. It just shows a little more about how this unconscious level of our functioning works, and sometimes these things pop up into conscious experience. And when they do, it isn't that a miracle has happened, really. It's just that the circumstances have been right at that moment to allow something to emerge into consciousness. There was an experience I had as a kid that impressed me. There was a period when I was about 6 or 7 that the family was having financial problems, and my mother was very, very worried, and she kind of fell into a chair just exhausted one day and had a vision. And in this vision, my dad had lost his job and didn't know how to find one, hadn't had any luck, like a lot of people nowadays. And my parents were pretty worn out with worry, and so my mother fell into a chair, and she had this vision. And in this vision, a man was there saying, don't worry, you're going to be fine, and you're going to move to a town that's 2 towns divided by a river with no water, which made absolutely no sense. You know, it seems like pure nonsense. And then she opened her eyes, and he disappeared. But for some reason, she was very reassured by this, and she told my dad about it, and he was used to her having psychic experiences from time to time, so he didn't know what to make of it either, but he was glad she felt better. And then they totally forgot about it, and then we moved to a town in northern New Mexico. My dad got a job, and the family moved to a little town called Las Vegas, New Mexico. And in that town, they found, after they'd been there a little while, that it was actually 2 towns. It wasn't a big town, but it was divided into 2 separate town governments, school systems, police departments, and so forth, because of the history of the place. And And what divided the two towns was the Guyanus River, and the Guyanus River is almost always dry as a bone. So it was a town that was two towns divided by a river with no water, and she would have these experiences from time to time. Now, what made that become conscious? Because my theory says that information about the future is always implicitly available there. Why does it pop up sometimes? Well, one reason it pops up, we now know from research, is that the information is really important at that moment. And this is true whether it's a subliminal percept or a memory or a creative impulse, any other kind of unconscious process. Things are more likely to come into our experience when we really need them. That's one thing. Another thing is, are you open-minded about that source of information? My mother believed in ESP. She believed that visions could sometimes tell you something true. And so she was open-minded about it. And we know that this is true of say, subliminal percepts or memories, that if we believe that a source, suppose you have someone, well, let me finish that sentence. If we believe that a source is valid, it's going to be more likely to influence our experience. If you take subjects in an experiment and have them memorize a position about taxation, say, and you tell half of them that this is a fraudulent position written by a political party that they don't like. And so they're reading this argument, but they're told to invalidate it, that it's coming from a bad source. And you tell the other half of the people this argument is coming from a study group that's independent and that's made up of distinguished scholars and it's objective and so forth. So the other people, you're told this is a valid source of information. And then you bring them back a week later after they've totally forgotten about having been there and having read this thing. But then you show them, you give them a questionnaire, and in the questionnaire are some items which indicate agreement or disagreement with what they had read a week before. Now, they don't necessarily even remember having read that thing a week before. But if they had been told that it was a valid source, those memories will influence their action, their responses in a positive way. They'll indicate that they agree more, even though they have no conscious memory of having read the thing or what they were told about it. If they were told it was an invalid source, they'll tend to disagree more. Now, this is happening totally implicitly because they have no memory of having read this thing. So if we believe that the source is legitimate, then we'll be more influenced by something. And that's true whether it's memory or subliminal percepts or ESP. My mother thought that it was valid, so she was more likely to be influenced by it. Another thing is a kind of open and non-cognitive state of mind. That is, when we're busy thinking, at the same time we're having to screen out everything else in the world that might distract our thinking. And so when we're thinking hard, we're not particularly creative. We're not drawing on implicit information of any kind very much. And this is true of ESP information, too. If you have someone engaged in a task that requires a lot of thought, you'll actually tend to get negative scores on ESP if you're giving them an ESP test at the same time. That is, we not only don't use the information, but we positively reject it. But my mother was exhausted enough at that moment that she wasn't thinking hard about anything. She was too tired to be doing any more thinking. And so she was in it. Here are three of the things that we know about that are helpful: being open to a source, not being in a cognitive state of mind, and what was the other thing? Oh, and the information is really important. There are other things that matter too, but those are three that we know about, and those were all certainly there that day and helped the experience be conscious for her.
And Dr. Carpenter, as you're saying this, it reminds me of people who are more easily to stay or to shift states of consciousness, like being the altered state of consciousness, like what we call trance. And in that mode, the processing of all these perceptions, they change. So some people have, they more easily get themselves into these altered states, and they process information in a different way. Do you think that with the new resources that we have with imaging studies of the brain, we would be able to understand more about this ESP and subliminal perception in general, preconscious events, and the possible therapeutic implications of it?
Yeah, we're learning a lot more all the time from about the brain level of everything, and that's certainly important and interesting. I think that let me see, I'm losing track of the first part of your statement, which I thought was interesting, and now I can't remember why.
The altered states of our
I think the fact that someone can induce an altered state and say is practiced at meditation or has a highly developed prayer life, that people like this are able to get away from a cognitive state of mind and access this sort of non-thinking, non-conceptual cognitive approach. And when they're doing that, they're going to be much more open to any kind of implicit information, whether it's extrasensory or subliminal or any other sort of implicit information. And we know, in fact, that people who are good at some of these things tend to be good at the others too. And there are often people who are able to access non-cognitive, non-thinking states when they choose to.
Yes, that's so interesting. Well, there is a lot to be done, right, Dr. Carpenter? So we are really we really recommend to people that they read your book First Sight, and most importantly because of the proposal that you bring, trying to get us to know more about ourselves, because as you said, get rid of the para, because it's all about our minds, it's our psychology, it's there, it's not something that is extraordinary out there, it's just about the ordinary mind. So what would you like to share as your final comments for the show today in regard to your book and your research? And
well, I would hope that anyone that's interested in how to integrate parapsychology in with mainstream ways of doing research, especially very current cutting-edge ways of understanding the unconscious level of the mind. I hope they do take a look at this model, because it shows that a lot of different people, both in parapsychology and in mainstream psychology, are really studying the same thing without knowing it. We're really involved in studying one single psychological reality, and it's just that it has a bigger reach than mainstream science tends to assume, which is what the parapsychologists are adding. They're saying that exactly the same patterns are going on unconsciously with material that's in the future and that's further away, that we're seeing in other laboratories with more mainstream, ordinary kinds of information, that we're all actually studying the same thing and that the same principles are holding, the same patterns are holding. I would say if anyone does decide to get my book, I would suggest that they put Chapter 2 at the end, because in Chapter 2, this was a structural mistake when I put this book together. Chapter 2 is very, very theoretical and very abstract, and it's a good summary statement, and it's fine for someone to read at the end, but to appear where it does can seem awfully tiresome to people. So I'd put it at the end if I were them. And I would encourage everyone's and encourage your station in what you're doing. I think you're broadening our understanding of ourselves in a way that's healing and helpful, and I'm glad to know about it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carpenter. We are really honored for having you here today, and we hope to have you back sometime next year. We wish you many blessings. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
So, dear listener, isn't that fascinating? As Bernadette Liao just wrote in the blog at Kardec Radio, it's fascinating to hear what Dr. Carpenter is saying, how much it merges with our understanding here, and how much science, it's so exciting, as she says, to see that science is more and more connecting to the understanding of our spirituality. Yes, it is, Bernadette, and we are very delighted to know that we're closer than ever. We have never been this close to getting these guys married, science and spirituality, because it's all about life. We're talking about life. We chopped life, religion, philosophy, science, and why? If it's all different angles of one single reality, there is no need to keep it aside. Let us bring it all together, because reasoning and faith, as Allan Kardec said, they can walk hand in hand. They can, because blind faith, it really has no use. Only when we reason faith, we actually are walking steadily and productively in our society. So we are very thankful to Dr. Carpenter, and we recommend to you, go to his website to get to know more about him and the work he has been doing. It's not easy, my friends. Being a scientist myself, I tell you, it takes a lot of guts to really be there and maintain yourself there like he has been doing for decades. His website is drjimcarpenter.com, and his book, fascinating as well, firstsightbook.com. And as he said, which is very humble on his side, and people often think of scientists as so proud of themselves, but you see, as you just heard from Dr. Jim Carpenter, they are always working in their productivity there. They realize something, they shift, they come around, they make amends, etc. So chapter 2, read it at the end of the book. This is his own recommendation. But don't forget, read it. Holiday season may be a great book to give to others. In not only that book, but the Medium's book. Put the both together, you see, beautiful combination. Can be explosive because it tells so much about our minds, and it can bring a lot of therapeutic features to all of us, because we know the reality is nowadays, if you have these psychic experiences, this extrasensory perception going wild in your life, today there's very little that mainstream science can do to help, besides giving you some form of pill. And even though sometimes even not psychotherapy can help. So Dr. Jim Carpenter is proposing a new theory that, in our opinion, goes very much aligned with what Kardec proposed. As we read at the beginning of the show, answer to question 249, when Kardec said, quite in that line of thought, it's our first sight because it's the sight of the soul. All perceptions are attributes of the spirit and are part of its being. When it is clothed with a material body, perceptions only arrive through organic channels. In the state of freedom, however, they are no longer localized. There is so much to know. This is just a teaser for us, because the new times hold the promise of a better society in which we understand more about our human mind. For now, we're going to give a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk to you a lot more, and we have our beautiful segments with Kardec Radio's team.
We will return to our program after these messages.
For the first time ever, the book Between Heaven and Earth by the spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is now in English. This is a novel that offers information about the relationship that exists in the activities of the spirit on the two planes of life. Purchase your copy today at www.edysayofamerica.com.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book Action and Reaction by the spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.edysayofamerica.com today. The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here in this beautiful program. We just had our conversation with Dr. Jim Carpenter. He outlined to us new understanding from a scientific perspective as a clinical psychologist and a research parapsychology. He is an associate professor at the University of North Carolina, and he has been bringing to us new awareness about our perception. Allan Kardec in the Spirit's book talk a lot about it. Go there and check it out. There's a whole chapter that he brings to us in questions 249 and so forth about the perception, sensations, and sufferings of spirits ourselves. We are spirits. There is a lot to know. And the problem is, here on the earth, when we don't understand how it goes by, like the other day, dear listener, believe it or not, I was having my nails done at the manicurist, and she's Buddhist. She's a Vietnamese Buddhist, and she's very loving and caring, and we're talking. And then she says, you know, Vanessa, I have a problem because my sister, she experiences these voices and she sees spirits. And then we were chatting about how Spiritism soothes our souls, consoles our hearts by telling us, look, you're not crazy. That's normal. That's what Jim Carpenter has come here to tell us. Actually, this is our first sight. It's not something out there extraordinary. Allan Kardec in the Spirit's book, he talks about in the Medium's book, he talks about that perception as something that is related to the realm of the natural laws of life. It's just that people don't know. But then this manicurist, a kind heart, she was saying, you know, we suffer a lot because we don't know what to do, and sometimes she doesn't know what to do. But thank God, the leader of her Buddhist temple, which we were invited to visit one of these days, he understands about it. He accepts the fact that there are spirit entities, and he has been trying to make her feel comfortable with that expanded perception, let's say this way, more than the ordinary people, if we may say this way, because the bottom line, we are all mediums, as Kardec said. But this show is all about the consolation to all hearts, saying, look, it's not only in the Spiritist theory or the Spiritist understanding that these extra sensory perceptions are out there. Science is coming close and is already proposing a model in which we absorb it as our first sight. because it's there even before we consciously realize it. Well, you can read much more in so many books we have talked about in the program. Right now, we're going to open the line for you to listen to the beautiful segments that Dr. Magalhães and Joyce Magalhães have put together to talk about the influence of TV in our lives, followed by Kirsten DeMello's Spiritist Moment when she's going to talk about the law of reproduction, many races, according to the Spirit's book by Allan Kardec. And after the break, we have more. Bernadette Leal teaching parents how to teach peace to teens. And at the end of the show, Naur Fonseca and Gabi Ferreira, who just had a baby. The dear Lees, congratulations, dear parents. They are going to lead us into a beautiful chapter of the book Jesus in the Home. It's the God at Home segment. But stay there, please, because at the very end of the show, we will be back with a beautiful prayer. Because when we pray, we are connecting consciously to our dear Father, Mother God. Stay there, enjoy this, and share the news that Kardec Radio is here to nourish your soul.
Dear listener, welcome to our segment Spiritism in Your Life. Today, we propose to you a reflection. What do you watch on TV? What are your favorite TV shows, movies? Moreover, what do you allow your kids to watch? Have you ever thought about how this could affect you, and more importantly, how this can affect the development of your kid? Considering how powerful TV and computer are and how they influence our lives in the present society, I believe it's time to think if we are using them right. The media can definitely be used for the good, and it is an important tool for our intellectual progress if used properly. But, on the other hand, its misuse can negatively influence us and consequently disharmonize our thoughts, which could be more evident in kids, the spirits that are more susceptible to external influences. McClelland and co-workers did an interesting study on this topic, where they asked students to watch a film about Mother Teresa's work with the poor and sick in Calcutta. The students that watched Mother Teresa movie showed significant increases in the protective antibody salivary immunoglobulin A when compared with those watching a more neutral film. This important antibody remained high for an hour after the film in those participants who were asked to focus their minds on times when they had loved or been loved in the past. In summary, this study shows how positive behavior shown on the TV can positively affect ourselves as spirits, translating into positive change in our physical body. The contrary is also true. Dr. Robert Sedge did a comprehensive review on the association between television and media violence and violent behavior in children and adults. He observed that, despite some limitations, multiple studies have demonstrated that childhood television viewing is associated with increased risk of subsequent violence. In other words, nearly every study examining the relationship between television or other media violence and subsequent violent behavior has demonstrated a positive association. Television violence produces 4 types of harmful effects on viewers. Number 1, an increased tendency for viewers of large amount of television to behave violently toward others. Number 2, an increased fearfulness of becoming a victim of violence, with a resultant increase in self-protective behavior. Number 3, an increased desensitization toward actual violence. And number 4, a cycle in which aggressive children who watch television violence identify with violent characters, act like those characters, and seek out more and more violent programming. The effect of TV on us could be so powerful that studies have shown that repeated exposure to television violence produces subtle shifts in how adults view the world and contributes to a pessimistic perspective. Adults who watch large amounts of television are more likely to view the world with feeling of danger, mistrust, intolerance, gloom, and hopelessness than do adults with less television exposure. Similar results are found in preschool children. Considering the influence that media can cause on children's development, several studies suggest to parents: Number 1. Limit children's total media time to less than 1 to 2 hours per day. Number 2. Remove television sets from children's bedrooms. Number 3. Discourage television viewing for children younger than 2 years old. Number 4. Monitor the shows that are viewed by children and adolescents. Number 5. View programs and discuss the content with your children. Number 6. Use controversial programming to initiate discussions about family values, violence, sexuality, and drugs. And finally, number 7, encourage alternative entertainment for children. Dear listeners, after this scientific analysis, you may be asking yourself, how can we use Spiritist teachings to summarize and fully understand the effects of media on you? I can tell you, spiritually, every time you watch TV, listen music, or use your computer, you connect your mind to the message you are going through. And if this message inspires violence in any level, your spirit will be connected to it. This process may rekindle vices that are dormant deep in your soul and make it more difficult to progress morally. On that way, you should be vigilant on what you see or interact with, because that can affect your state of mind and disturb your balance and connection to the good and high. Definitely, that is even more significant in childhood, a time when the spirit is open to receive the external influences that will direct his progress in the present life. We are not here to blame, criticize, or change TV, but we want to open your eyes and help you make better decisions in your pathway of progress. Remember, you are the one to choose what you want to be connected to. Thank you so much, and God bless us.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listeners, and welcome back to our segment, The Spiritist Moment. And I am your host, Kirsten DeMello. We are giving continuation to our study on the natural divine laws based upon Part 3 of the Spirit's book. We give continuation as we are studying the law of reproduction. And what's interesting is we go to question 688, and Kardec asks the spirits, and we quote, "At this moment, there are certain human races that are obviously diminishing. Will a time come when they will have completely disappeared from the earth?" And the spirits answer, "Yes, but others will have taken their place, as others will someday take yours." And also, dear friends, similarly, questions 689 and 690 all sort of pertain to the same idea. And let us read quite briefly 689. Question 689. Are the human beings of today a new creation, or are they perfected descendants of primitive beings? They are the same spirits. They have returned to perfect themselves in new bodies, but they are still far from perfection. Thus, the human race, which, through its growth, tends to invade the whole earth and to replace the races that are dying out, will also go through its own period of decrease and extinction. Other more perfected races will replace it. These will have descended from the present ones, just as the civilized human beings of the present day have descended from the brutes and primitives of early eras. This is really interesting, dear friends, because we learn in Spiritism, and also in the Spirit's book, we learn that, or the one thing in which we are different from animals, or the animal kingdom, is that we have this incessant desire to progress. And this is also true of our physical form, that at the races that are reincarnating on the earth, Some die out, and others are replaced by new ones. Let us also take this opportunity to quote from the book, On the Way to the Light, that was psychographed by the Brazilian medium Chico Xavier by the Spirit Emmanuel, and we quote in the introduction of the book, and Emmanuel says the following: "Races and generations come and go, as do languages and cultures, countries and borders, sciences and religion. A divine breath moves everything in that marvelous whirlwind." So we see here, dear friends, not only in the Spirit's book, but also in this book, On the Way to the Light, it also talks about the races that come and go, languages and cultures that come and go, and things change. This is very evident. And it's interesting for us Spiritists to reflect that in this life I am of one race or one culture, speak a certain language, but in the future I may speak a different language. Something for us to think about. We are always ever changing and growing. And let us quote from Emmanuel in this same book a little further down in the introduction. He states that the determinism of love and the good is the law of the whole universe, and the human soul emerges from every catastrophe looking for a better life. So this, dear friends, is part of also what the spirits tell us, that we have this inner drive, this innate drive to want to better ourselves, to find ourselves in a better position, this incessant desire to want to be better. And as we go through these evolutionary changes, we always remember exactly what Emmanuel teaches us here. It is this determination, this determinism of love, and the good is the law of the whole universe, that we come back many, many times, as the spirits tell us in question 689, to perfect ourselves in new bodies. So it is quite comforting as we think about this thought, that we have this wonderful, blessed opportunity to come back again and again and again to rectify and redress past errors, and actually new things that we seek to learn and learn about and grow. And as always, dear friends, we recommend you to go read and study the literature that we mention here today and vast other books of the codification. And until next time, I wish you and we wish you many blessings.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Would you like to liberate yourself from your life struggles or to find inner balance? The Inner Journey CD has 3 beautiful visualizations that will help you bring harmony to your life. As Joanna DeAngeli tells us to, live in a way that you leave enlightening footprints in your pathway as if they were stars pointing out the pathway to happiness. To find this CD, go to the bookstore on the Spiritist Society of Baltimore webpage, www.ssbaltimore.org. That is www.ssbaltimore.org, and start your inner journey today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
And now we return to our program.
Welcome to our Youth Education in Spiritism with Kardec Radio. I am Bernadette Leal, and I'll be spending a few minutes with you, inspiring to bring you spiritual awareness and spiritist teachings to our youth, parents, and educators. Today we will continue talking about peace. In our last program, we answered the question, how can conflict affect our inner peace? And today's question is, how can I help improve and have a peaceful relationship with my teenage child? Dear Kardec Radio listeners, not only working on having a peaceful relationship with your children is important, but also assessing the environment in which they live. Parents and caregivers should ask themselves if their home is a peaceful place. How can we focus on building a good relationship with children if they live in an unstable home where parents and children are treated disrespectfully? In regards to teenagers, many parents may dream of having an ideal child who always listens, does not argue, has no drama, or is not moody. But we know that this is not the reality. We all remember those teenagers' years of our lives, trying to understand the world around us and fit in, dealing with peer pressure, hormones, crushes, and our relationship with our parents. One of the reasons why teenagers struggle so much to have a peaceful mind is because of the conflict that they have to deal, and which is a natural part of their developmental stage. We mentioned in our previous show that peace is the absence of conflict. And since teenagers have conflict, they may struggle to find inner peace depending on their parents or mentors to help them to manage those conflictive moments of their lives. A child can be more peaceful when the parent is in peace. Have you noticed that when a parent is irritated or angry, it affects all the people around him, including his children? We can also be affected by the behavior of our children. We feel emotionally, physically, and psychologically distressed after an argument with our child. And as a result, we may be sad, become depressed, not realizing that we are surrounding ourselves with negative energy. Be vigilant when that happens. The spiritual teachings explain that as we lower our vibration level, we will open the door to suffer influences of low-level spirits, affecting our state of mind and taking away our peace. So, what can you do to be more positive and improve the relationship with your teenager? Well, one technique that you can do when you are upset about your child or had an argument with him is to picture an image of your child as a baby, or create a mental image of you holding him in your arms for the first time, recalling all the feelings connected with that precious moment. Or have a collage in a place that you frequently pass by in your house of several happy pictures of your child when he was a baby or having fun with you. So whenever you feel sad, just look at the pictures and smile. You will practice this and you see the difference in energy, bringing a joyful state of mind as you focus on the good moments. Also, try to have an open mind when talking to your teenager, doing your best to not get shocked or too surprised when he shares something with you. You don't need to agree with him, but it's important to stay calm so he feels he can trust you and has a good communication with you. Additionally, try to catch up with the new trends and technology. Do not stay stuck in the past, trying to raise your child the same way you were raised. These are different times. Be cool. Learn a little bit about what he does, his jokes, his lingo, so you can diminish the gap between the two generations. The spirit Joana de Angelis, in her book psychographed by Divaldo Pereira Franco called Adolescence in Life, reminds us that parents and educators are invited to accompany their pupils with a constant dialogue and understanding of their aspirations, all the while retaining a moral position that instills respect and openness, strengthening the adolescents' courage as well as supporting them in their challenges, so that they may feel confident to step forward securely in the direction of the future. Teaching teenagers about the Spiritist philosophy also helps them to obtain inner peace. Many teenagers, feeling hopeless and not knowing what to do, will have negative thoughts that may lead to depression or even suicide. Spiritism is the light that will brighten their path and lead their way. It helps them to understand and accept some challenges in life as they learn about family ties, moral and inner transformation, reincarnation, and their connection with the spiritual world. In the same book, Adolescence and Life, Joanna de Angelis says, Spiritism offers adolescents an ideal project of life in explaining to them the real objective of the existence in which they are inserted. It also teaches them that the spirit is immortal and that the organic journey consists of a precious resource for the appraisal of the formative, emancipating, and blissful process. Kardec Radio listeners, having a calming and peaceful mind is very important to guide and support teenagers. They need their independence, but also love and patience. It is natural that they will have some conflicts as they grow up, affecting their inner peace, but their moral education, parental support, and the wonderful teachings of Spiritism can make a positive impact in their present and future and help them to overcome their fears, vices, and life challenges. Thanks for listening to Yes, and if you have any questions that would like us to answer in this segment, please email them to Kardec@KardecRadio.com.
Good morning, dear Kardec Radio listeners. Welcome to one more meeting with God at Home. I am Naor Fonseca.
And I am Gabi Ferreira. In today's program, we will study about Lesson 13, The Sincere Revolutionary, from the book Jesus in the Home by Spirit Neo Lúcio and psychographed by Chico Xavier.
How often do we feel rebellious when we hear about an injustice, irregularities in government, or a family dispute? Who do you think is more courageous, one who defies an empire or one who fulfills his or her obligations? Today's story is about these two sentiments.
Some may be familiar with the fact that Judas was fascinated with the idea that the kingdom of heaven should be implanted quickly and forcefully by a decree of government. One night, he had been speaking enthusiastically about a possible uprising in Jerusalem, when the Lord very calmly added these comments.
A king in ancient times was regarded by his people as being so cruel that the head prophet of the kingdom was called upon to lead a widespread rebellion to try to dethrone him. At first, the prophet did not believe the accusations, but the people convinced him that the king had a heart of stone and persecuted his subjects all over the kingdom. Then the trusting prophet became enraged as well and accepted the idea of a revolution as the only remedy. However, since he had an unwavering trust in God, on the eve of the event he went up on the top of a mount and prayed so fervently for divine assistance that an angel from heaven was sent to have a heart-to-heart with him. The angel then said,
"In the name of the Supreme Lord, the plan will be approved under one condition. You must live with the king for 100 days in his palace as a humble and loyal servant. At the end of this time, if your mind is set on the same intent, you can overthrow the throne with our support."
Humble and sincere, he went to the royal abode and took the job as an unknown servant. As soon as he began serving the king, he noticed that the king never had time for any pleasures of life. In the morning, he would be surrounded by impertinent advisors and ministers. He was tormented of complaints by the hour. He was deprived of his children's affection, and he lived far away from his wife. In addition, he always suffered ill health due to banquets and ceremonies, and he was forced to listen to all kinds of lies. He never slept, nor did he eat at the right time each day. By the end of the 100 days, the prophet had undergone a dramatic transformation and returned to the mount to honor his promise. When the angel appeared, he implored him to have mercy on the king, for whom he now felt a sincere sense of compassion. The prophet gathered the people and notified that the king was perhaps the most tortured man in the entire kingdom, and that instead of a revolution, they should show more understanding and work harder at their jobs, so the king could without trouble fulfill the mission that had been bestowed upon him. The rebellion gave way to understanding and hard work.
What a beautiful lesson of humbleness and understanding. The leader of the revolution worked for his enemy as a simple servant and was able to put himself on the king's shoes, completely changing the perspective. He did not give up his ideals, but he kept an open mind to comprehend the other side. This lesson leads us to think about our relationships and how many times we are quick to judge the other people instead of pausing and reflecting on what makes them act in disagreement to what we think. It takes a great amount of courage to show compassion. As Joanna de Angelis says, true courage is demonstrated by the way you confront the battles of life, day to day. Courage is calm and constant, lucid and creative, while rebelliousness is desperate, aggressive, and irritated.
We will return to our program after these messages. Do you find yourself with no time to stop and read or meditate about spiritism or spirituality? We have a great solution for you. The audio CD called Unfolding Our Spiritual Nature, Path of Harmony by Ra Tashira is an enlightening CD with a question and answer session as well. Feel the enrichment and purchase your copy today at www.ssbaltimore.org. Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Learn more about indigo and crystal children with the book The New Generation, The Spiritist View on Indigo and Crystal Children by Devoto Franco with Vanessa Anzalone. Whether you're a parent or not, this book will enrich your mind. Go to www.ssbaltimore.org and click on Bookstore and purchase your copy today.
The Spiritist magazine is a trimestral, digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
Now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we hope you have enjoyed much the show today. And there is so much more. You know, Kardec Radio is just at its beginning. And beginning in the sense of its mission. And you can join us. If you are listening to this and you have any idea, suggestion for new shows, other interviews, if you yourself
feel like as a spiritist that you would like to contribute with voiceovers or with segments, please write us at kardecradio@gmail.com. Write to us, share your thoughts. We're open. There is so much to be done. There is a lot actually to be done, and we are just increasing the team of collaborators at Kardec Radio. Next week, when we come back, there is going to be a whole program dedicated to something that is quite important. We discussed briefly here with Dr. Jim Carpenter today about people who have these perceptions and can be quite pathological, bringing them to an imbalance. And that in Spiritism, these disturbances can get into the realm of what we say obsession. And in Spiritism, there is a therapy for it that we call disobsession. There is a book that was written by the Spirit Dr. André Luiz, Disobsession, through the mediumistic hands of Chico Xavier. And we're going to discuss the concept of obsession next week with our dear André Cabral from the Spiritist group Path of Light in Long Branch, New Jersey. And you can get a hold of the program that we're going to have in December 22nd, which is going to be all about the beautiful book, 2,000 Years Ago, by Emmanuel, with Jocka Daledon from England. And at the end of the year, there is much more. Paul and Stephen, probably a show at Christmas Eve. Can you believe it? For all of us who want to know more about our guiding model. By the way, when we talk about Jesus as guiding model, one of the books that is a promise to be translated is the book Boa Nova. The book Boa Nova by the Spirit Humberto de Campos, a renowned writer who in the spiritual realm brought lots of teachings for us. And in chapter 14, he describes some features. The whole book, it's a true description of Jesus in his whole set. And he talks about, especially in chapter 14, he says, and the prophet, Jesus, is not seduced by big promises that other people made in reference to his material future. Because many people came to Jesus and say, you know, if you do this, I can get you this position and the other. He didn't care about it. And Brother X, or Humberto de Campos, he said, Jesus never tempered his word of truth with the conveniences of the comfort of the time. Though magnanimous towards all the faults of others, Jesus used to combat evil with such an intense ardor that he would soon after be made object of hostility by all types of hidden intentions. This is our guiding model. And why we're emphasizing this? Because this month we're all thinking about Jesus. He's our guiding model, meaning whatever he used to do, we need to coach ourselves to get there. And dear friends, he didn't get seduced by big promises of the material future. He didn't mix his truth with the conveniences of shaking hands with people at the time, compromising our need to become virtuous. And though he was very kind to the faults of others, he used to combat evil very intensively. And for that, he was really threatened, so much so that he got crucified. Sometimes we ask, why did he get crucified, right? Well, because he was the real deal. And he said, this is going to happen to you as much as it did to me. Because if it happens to me, as he said, who am the green branch of the tree of life, what is going to happen to you, the dry branches of the tree? We're the dry branches. We still need the sap of Jesus' love to feed our souls and to be up and running. So let us nourish our souls with these teachings. And now we invite you to raise our thoughts and pray. Loving Master Jesus, we're yet to understand about ourselves. Imagine to understand about life as a whole. Humbled by our limitations, we kneel down into reverence to God for sending you to care for each one of us, hoping that unique holy night of yours can be renewed every day, as in the song, the lyrics poetically put together by our dear James Moroda. May that holy night be the true daily invitation to a new self. May we focus on our renewal, in our transformation, forgiving ourselves and one another, accepting our humanity, so one day we can come closer to your arms, reaching out to all who are in need of consolation, of hope, and healing. May you bless the brilliant mind of Dr. Jim Carpenter, the whole team at Kardec Radio who kindly collaborates with this simple efforts. And may the whole humanity on the earth feel your sweet invitation to a healthy life, not only for today, but for our immortality. Thank you, dear Master Jesus. Thank you, dear Lord of life, and so be it. Oh, dear listener, wherever you are, please receive a big hug from us, because you know what? As Humberto de Campos beautifully describes in his book, our Master Jesus was a guy who loved to embrace and hug people, because that's a sign of affection, and he cares for us. So please receive also our hug of gratitude for listening to us, for helping us, for sending your beautiful thoughts, and share the news that Kardec Radio is here, not only live, but on demand at kardecradio.com, at iTunes, and blogtalkradio.com. We wish you lots of blessings in this week, and next week, the therapy of disobsession for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.